Welcome to FX Options University, recorded live at the International Securities Exchange, the world's largest equity options exchange. Join the industry's top trading professionals as they provide insight and strategies for trading in the currency markets using FX options. FX options are a low-risk alternative to hedging currency moves in any market condition.
And to me, these are some of the easiest patterns to identify, and it's just a matter of going back and recognizing the important role, the very important role that these support and resistance levels play. But of course, with a double bottom, we have a falling market and a bounce off of a support level, and a pullback. Test no lower than that previous support, and then it's that break of that previous pivot point. Now, what we would be doing, of course, all the while identifying this particular pattern is we'd be looking at our MACD, we'd be looking at our RSI, and we'd be looking for key characteristics within those particular indicators suggesting that a move to the upside may very well be underway. So let's just put this principle to work here in a realistic scenario whereby we're looking at the possibility of a double top formation. Again, if we go back to this BPX, we can see that we've had a market that's been trending to the upside. We had a test of a high. If we draw our resistance level across here, you can see that we had that test come in twice. Now we have what would appear to be that little M formation or that little topping formation. We have a pivot point right in here. And, of course, we did have a little bit of a fake-out break here, but the fact is we didn't see the market move back up, or in this case the pair value move back up to breach this previous resistance level. And the idea is that a breakdown below here will signal the confirmation that this is indeed a double top. Now, of course, we go down and we look at our MACD. We have our MACD crossing over and our RSI suggesting that momentum is building to the downside. You have your makings of what would appear to be a high probable trade. But in the same note, a turnaround in this market and a break above this resistance level here is going to be your exit strategy, because obviously we need to see a downtrend make lower lows and lower highs, and if the first sign of a higher high is your sign that you're probably on the wrong side of the trade. Now let's look at continuation patterns, guys. Continuation patterns, the other major type of pattern that we're looking at when we're analyzing these price charts. Of course, a continuation pattern, not surprisingly, indicates a pause in the prevailing trend. These types of patterns tend to take less time to form than reversals because essentially the major trend in force has already been established. And we tend to see, in the case of where we can actually measure the volume, you tend to see a pause with lighter volume, and then you tend to see the trend resume on an increase of trading activity. And we've got a couple of different types of patterns that we might look for, such as triangles, wedges, flags, and pennants. Now, I'm just going to take a quick look here at one of my favorites, which is the inclining wedge. Now, the inclining wedge, as you can see here, we have a falling market, and what happens is it almost kind of fools people into believing that the market is completely reversing, because we have that break of a higher high that tends to be the characteristic for a continuation in the uptrend. But what happens is that the highs are getting the lows are in fact getting higher faster than the highs are getting higher. So you have this sort of price action that culminates into a bit of what we would refer to as an apex. Now, they sometimes call this particular pattern a bull trap, or sorry, a bear trap, because the fact is many people are lured into the market believing that it's going to go higher, and in fact what happens is we get a break beyond that lower trend line, and that signals the continuation of the downside. Now, one way that we can actually look at being a little more on the ball with identifying whether or not this is a continuation to the upside or in fact an inclining wedge is just by looking at our MACD. And what we should see, if momentum and if the strength and trend is to the upside, then we should see our MACD and our RSI, for that matter, supporting that movement to the upside. But if we see these higher highs being made, but down in our the histogram of the MACD for that matter, we see that divergence taking place whereby those little bars are getting lower, and we also see the RSI line sort of tapering to the downside a bit. Then we can step back and recognize that maybe there's not quite the support for this move, and we would be more inclined to look for a break to the downside and participate in that wedge. Now, the other wedge, of course, is a declining wedge, which is really built on the same principles, just essentially reversed, whereby you have a rising market, you have a pullback that forms a pivot, and then you have a break below that pivot that, again, leads people to believe that there's perhaps a complete change to the downside. But what we can do, again, is just use our MACD and our RSI to establish whether or not they're actually confirming that, or whether you're seeing some contradictory information there. And the idea is that if there is any conflict in information, rather than rushing in and sort of saying, whatever, 1 out of 3 isn't bad, the idea is that more appropriate to stand aside, because traditionally what happens with your declining wedges is, again, you get that reversal, and generally the first target is from where that wedge started to form. And of course, if you entered in short somewhere down here, then of course your put options are going to be coming into some pressure as the market takes off, whichever pair value you're trading takes off in the complete opposite direction. Now, just to give you a quick example before we wrap things up of what we may consider in terms of continuation patterns, I would be looking at the right here, just the if you'll notice. We had this little downtrend in place here. You can see this is actually is more indicative of what we would call a bear flag, but you'll notice that we had the pair value here. In this case, it's the U.S. versus the Australian dollar. We had the AUX here consolidate, form this flag. Flags and wedges have the same connotation in the sense that we have our bearish wedges, we have our bearish flags. This would be more indicative of a representative of a bear flag, but there's again, you can see that while the pair value actually reversed and made an attempt higher, you'll notice that our MACD continued to support a move to the downside. You'll notice that the RSI continued to support a move to the downside. And the other thing that I would say is very important characteristic is just recognizing that this particular candle closed very importantly off of a test of an important high, and that really tells you that the U.S. dollar bulls really had very little conviction and were unable to hold those price levels, suggesting the high probability of a continuation to the downside. What I would just actually to make the observation at this point in time is that while we saw this bear flag follow through and carry on lower, what I would suggest may be an interesting proposition is to take a look at this pattern right in here, which may very well be a wedge, a declining wedge, suggesting the possibility of a move to the upside. But the bottom line is the way we stay away from a dangerous situation is we need to put a benchmark in place. And so we have to essentially step back and remember all of the different tools that we utilize to confirm a particular directional bias.
Thank you for participating in this week's session. Please join us again next week. Get trading ideas, exchange rates, webinars, news, and commentary. Visit www.fxoptions.com. ISE FX options can be easily traded through all options-enabled brokerage accounts. These exchange-listed securities are cash-settled in U.S. dollars and have a European-style exercise.